Hello there YouTube, my name is The Creatorism, and today I'm going to explain to you what would happen if we as humans were capable of time travel. Now, what is time travel? Simply put, it's the ability for a person or a group of people to transverse the fine line between something known as the present, the past, and the future. Now, we as people live within the present. The present is only 1 second long. You can debate this, but we're not going to go into millimeters. We're just going to say that the present is 1 second long. Every other second after this 1 second could be considered the past, and every other second before this 1 second could be considered the future. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to time travel. Now we're going to be discussing two types of time travel. We're going to be talking about linear time travel and infinite possibilities time travel. Let's start off with linear because that's the easier one for me to explain. Alright, so with linear time travel, it's easy. You have one straight line. One straight line. This straight line is history. History can be separated into intervals at different points, but we can pretty much consider the present, the past, the future, etc., etc., etc. You get the whole idea of what a linear time is. If we as people lived within a universe that used a linear set of time, that means if we were to say travel to the future, anything that happens in the future is predetermined, meaning that we can do whatever we want, and that was planned. So everything that you see in a TV show, that if we travel to the future and then travel back to the past, nothing would happen because that would have been predicted beforehand. Now, what's usually used is not a linear time, but instead a unconventional time, but we're not going to focus on that. Actually, yeah, let's focus on that right now because I pretty much explained everything with a linear future. Nothing happens. I really hate this timeline. That pretty much says everything that's happened so far has been predetermined either because the universe says so or because there's a God. And you know, I don't believe in one of those options, so the only other option is completely absurd to me. But anyway, let's move on to the multiple, a linear mixed with, sorry, 1 second. We have a linear with unconventional future. I call it unconventional instead of infinite possibilities because this is still linear. What I mean by that is that you could still alter the future so long as you abandon the initial line that was set for the history. Now, if you were to branch off, the future would not be affected, or it would be affected if you were to say travel back in time. But we're just going to be focusing on the future for right now because that's easier to explain with a linear time. So anyway, if we as humans were to time travel and that went against the normal pattern of history or time, then we would branch off and create a completely separate time period. However, the thing is with this is that we're able to backtrack and go back to the initial point, meaning that it will create its own linear time period, as thus it would merge and become the new time period. So now this can be crossed out of existence, and now this is the new time period right here. That is how an unconventional time period would work. The same applies to the past. If something goes against the normal flow of time, the new flow of time would then replace the initial flow of time, and this would become the primary time period. Now that we got rid of the initial, the linear time flow, let's move on to the more interesting, which is infinite possibilities. Let me just draw a couple lines right here. Infinite possibilities is something more unconventional. It's unpredictable, and if I believe that this is the more likely method of time, how time is, sorry, I feel that this is most likely what time is like. And if this is the case, I feel that we as humans should never be able to time travel, or else bad things will happen. So with this type of future, or sorry, with this type of time, we have many billions among billions of possibilities. meaning that the universe that we live in right now is the only universe in existence. In existence. That's the only universe that we live in. So that means if we were to say, I don't know, travel to the future, we would instead be traveling to a completely different universe altogether. Meaning, if we were to say travel back in time, we wouldn't be able to go back to our initial. Instead, we would have to travel back to a completely different point in history, or it can be a completely different universe altogether. Here's another thing. Because of the fact that if we distance ourselves from our primary universe and say travel to the future or say travel to the past, if we were to travel or attempt to travel back to our time period, we can overshot it and move into the future. However, we wouldn't be able to know because we lack a reference point in history. That is how to describe it, at least to say. Let's see, what else can I explain with time travel? Time travel, I'm discounting paradox, by the way. Paradox is where you disregard all of this and you're pretty much considering a linear universe that completely changes to an alternate reality and thus causes a discord between time and space and future, meaning that you're disconnecting yourself between the past and the future, and you're living solely within the present, meaning every second in this paradox is the present, which goes against what I said earlier, where you only live 1 second in the present. But anyway, that's besides the point. Let's move on to some of the interesting aspects of time travel, shall we? Now, let's see. In the multiple possibilities future, there's also actually no. Sorry, what I meant to say was I'm going to be going over some of the different types of time travel methods used in, say, books, TV shows, and etc. One show in particular, it's called The Melancholia of Haruhi Suzumiya, revolves around time travel within a linear time period. However, even though they say that, they perpetuate the idea that time is like this, which it's actually a straight line in their universe. It's a straight line, no matter how much they try to say otherwise. And the reason for that is because we have the main character who travels outside of his universe into the future universe, but that was predetermined, meaning that when he goes back to the past, that is also predetermined. Or say he were to travel from the past to the future, everything in the show is predetermined. It's going to happen. And the only other instance that I could think of that goes against that, every instance that goes against the flow of time would be considered a paradox. And that paradox would be the main character Haruhi Suzumiya. But anyway, that's besides the point. Another show that I like to talk about, by the way, I'm going to be talking about a lot of anime because that's usually what discusses it the most, would be a show, for example, Dragon Ball Z. In the show Dragon Ball Z, the Cell story arc, we had the main character, Trunks, sorry, not the main character, but the main character of, the initial character, the main focus of it. He comes back from the future. This is his timeline. But he lives within multiple possibility universe, meaning that he doesn't come from the initial flow of the Dragon Ball Z universe, but instead comes from an alternate reality or another history. So if that were true, that would mean time would have split somewhere around here and came that way instead of here. There would be no connection up from a certain point. Goku wouldn't be on the planet, but anyway, Trunks lives inside a universe that's completely different from the one that he lives in. As such, when he tries to go back in past, say somewhere around here before the androids are created, he instead misses that because this has become non-existent, and instead travels back to a point that is within existence, and that is a current time period. So that would make him travel back to the present. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I sound pretty confused right now. Trunks is trying to travel back to the past. However, his past does not exist. So to compensate for that, he needs to find a universe, a tangent universe that lives within the present, that is currently experiencing the present simultaneously as his present. So the present that he finds himself with is the present of the initial Dragon Ball Z storyline. That's an interesting concept to me, at least. Alright, let's see. Now let's talk about Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a very interesting show. I love that show so much. Uh, time. The show's concept of time is, to say the least, extremely difficult to comprehend, because he lives in a realm of a linear future and within a multiple possibilities future. And the reason why I say that is because he lives within a world where these two are somehow intertwined, where they're both infinite possibilities, but in the infinite possibilities, they have predetermined sets, meaning that we have to go way beyond this point, just way back there to actually discuss that. But anyway, I'll try to discuss this as best I can. Um, let's see. So in the show, Doctor Who is able to travel between the past, the present, and the future without any restrictions, and he's unable to alter the future unless he does something drastic. That usually seems to be the most used method of time travel whenever used in a show, which to me seems the most absurd because it's so much more confusing than it has to be. So again, I'm going to go back to initial time travel. Past, present, future. You can go from the present to the future. If you live in a linear universe, you can travel from the future back to the present without changing anything. You can travel from the future back to the past, so on and so forth. If you live in a multiple possibilities universe, you live within your own secluded universe from every other universe, and every other universe lives within a branch that branches off like this. It's infinite, multiple billions among billions, and basically all these universes can either be separate on their own, or they could have branched off and separated themselves from the initial universe, meaning that everything began at one point and just sort of branched off. That is how that time travel would work. It's very confusing, time travel. It really is. Just trying to explain it. But anyway, back to Doctor Who and why, in my opinion, this is one of the most absurd methods of time travel that could ever be implemented within a show. So again, you have the linear universe that they live in, and they have the multiple possibilities universe that they also live in as well. The Doctor is able to travel from the present to the past and to the future, all willy-nilly without any restrictions, as I said. But he lives within a universe that is able to be changed, meaning that he lives within a single universe that can be altered, meaning that the multiple possibilities universe is all one single universe. And I'm not even going to go into the topic. I'm not even going to go there. That's going to take too long. Another thing that I like to talk about is Donnie Darko. I love that movie. Donnie Darko is about, I don't know, it's really confusing to explain it, but it's about a paradox that occurs within the present being the future. So here we are. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's not either of those. It's actually more along here. There's a paradox that occurs right here in the movie Donnie Darko, and as such, we have a secluded universe that's, I don't know, I believe it's called an alternate universe, a paradox. Sorry, I'm just going to call it paradox. I didn't want to talk about paradoxes, but I have to. Alright, so we have a paradox that's separate from the universe that's initial, and as such, Donnie, let's call this line Donnie. Donnie is supposed to ricochet this back into there because there's a disruption between the space-time continuum that causes this paradox, and it's up to Donnie to put this paradox back into the initial plot, and this is constantly happening. This is a constant cycle. It will continuously happen over and over again. Oh yeah, that brings up another thing. We have the reoccurrence of time. What I mean by that is simple. Let me just get rid of all of these really quick. What I mean by the reoccurrence of time is that every second, this only occurs in a linear universe, by the way. This is why some aspects of a linear universe is very interesting. In a linear universe, time repeats itself over and over and over again each second. Each second that we have ever lived will repeat itself over and over and over again, meaning that, which is the explanation why we're able to travel back in time. That's the reason why in a linear universe we are capable of traveling back in time. In a multiple possibility universe, the concept of being able to travel back in time and traveling to the future is a bit iffy, because you have to take into consideration that you pretty much live in the present, and the past isn't necessarily existent. It doesn't necessarily exist. Well, it existed at one point, but it doesn't exist anymore. And that's why it's somewhat difficult to pinpoint what exactly is possible when we say you can travel back in time, because I feel that we live in a multiple possibility universe, and as such, time travel. Anyway, I like to end this video because I'm just talking. This is a weird video. I just wanted to throw this out there because I was talking to myself the other day about time travel. So I thought about, forget that. So I just decided, hey, let's talk about time travel when I get back home. And so here I am right now, just talking about time travel. So let's cover all the main points. We as people live within one of two options, which is a linear universe and a multiple possibility universe. The linear universe has about 2, maybe 3 possibilities. One possibility is we have multiple paths and a singular future, or we have multiple futures and a singular past, but that would include a reference point, or we have a singular line of time, and that pretty much signifies a creator. And then for the multiple possibilities universe, there is no way of concluding whether or not we are capable of choosing. But if we were to time travel, we are in a single universe, and the possibilities of traveling between a sole line connecting our universe to the past and to the present is impossible. That's all I want to say. Anyway, this is just a really stupid video that I decided to make. Anyway, my name is Creatorism. Have a nice day.